Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we have another brand new Jurassic World Rebirth release, and it's not every day that I grab these Imaginext figures, but sometimes they produce some super cool figures that I just cannot help myself, and I have to end up grabbing them. I really quite like the exaggerated look of some of them, and this set featured so many figures, one of which is the Titanosaurus, that I just had to grab this one. So you can see we've got quite a bit going on as far as what's included. You can also see the packaging does show off a really cute little Imaginext version of what I assume is a T-Rex, as well as the Jurassic World Rebirth logo. And then if we turn it around, you can basically get a good feel for what is inside the set, all of the different species and everything. So let's pop this open and check it out. So here is everything now out of the packaging, and you can see we've got so many different figures in here, a large amount of the different species that we've seen in Jurassic World Rebirth so far. The very first species, I guess you could say, that I'm going to bring in, though, is Scarlett Johansson, which I believe is who we are looking at here. This would be Zora Bennett, and you can see the figure looks pretty fun as far as like an Imaginext version goes. She's got her eyes on here, the lips and everything. You can see there's a pinkish tone. She almost has a little bit of a smirk on her. We can see the eyebrows up there as well, and her little nose poking out. We also can take note to the hair sticking out here of the back of the hat and then down from the side of the hat, painted again blonde. We can take note to the hat that she is wearing, which is pretty decent, but also very large on her head. She does have some neck articulation, so you can turn and completely swivel the neck around if we want to snap her neck. Does go a little bit forward and back as you move down. The shirt looks pretty good. She's got some pockets and some very nice fine detail to that area. We can see all sorts of wrinkles and creases in her sleeves as we move down into the hands. The hands are quite large compared to the rest of her body, but they're nicely sculpted and painted, again, given that nice flesh tone. We can move the arms out away from the body and forward and back. I don't remember if the older Imaginext figures had impressive arm articulation like that, but the newer ones clearly do. But as we move down, she's got some green pants. You can see a little bit of a glossy look to the pants at first, but that disappears as we lead down. She has like a knife or something here on the side of the pants. Again, all sorts of creases as we lead through. And then we have the boots, which are also nicely sculpted, painted with a brown. And then, of course, you can see the laces and everything. Leg articulation-wise, the legs do move together, unfortunately. There's also like some peg holes here on the undersides of her feet. And then if we turn it around, take a look at the back, you can see that as well. Again, looks very nicely detailed overall. So she's definitely a pretty fun figure. On top of that, we've got ourselves a little Mosasaurus. Now, the Mosasaurus doesn't quite look like the Mosasaurus from the film as far as the coloration goes, but I guess when it comes to the sculpt in a goofy sort of a way, it does resemble it. We can take note to the detailing looking really good, though. The scales on the figure look very crisp overall. Again, when it comes to Imaginext, sometimes they've got some pretty nicely sculpted figures when it comes to the fine detail department. We do have like a yellowish sort of a tone for the primary body color and a darker brown that moves over the top of the figure. You can also see the flippers are nicely sculpted. We've got like a light tone, kind of like an off-white for the lower jaw that does move down along the underside. The Jurassic logo on the underside of that flipper right there. And even the detail within the flippers is actually quite nicely done. Same deal actually to the underside here. The scales also look really quite nice. We can even see the throat of the Mosasaurus right there. Kind of felt like there was some articulation, which we actually can swivel the flippers, which is really cool. Unfortunately, no jaw articulation. Seems like we should have that. The teeth are kind of, few and far between as far as the sculpt goes, but they are painted with a really bright white. We can see the tongue inside the mouth sculpted and painted with a pink. And unfortunately, we don't have the teeth on the upper side of the inside of the mouth. There's no real detail up there at all. But the Mosasaurus is pretty cool, and it's got a glass eye, which is really neat. And I always like the Imaginext glass eyes. I feel like they always work really well. There is also a little Spino in here. You can see the Spinosaurus is painted with a very nice blue, and then he's got a yellow for his sail. This is definitely the older Spinosaurus sculpt from Imaginext, as we don't have like the paddle-like tail or anything, but clearly we do have a Spinosaurus in the film. It just doesn't look like this one. But the detail again looks pretty decent as you move through. A few osteoderms popping up here and there, nice looking scales and everything. No glass eye for this guy, just a green eye with a black pupil. We can see the teeth there sculpted kind of hanging out of the mouth, but unfortunately unpainted. Overall, he's a cute little Spinosaurus, but there's no articulation really or anything to this guy. Just a fun little extra, quite exaggerated version of a Spinosaurus. And you're going to see the same thing when it comes to this little Triceratops, which we can see here. Again, we've got the horns sculpted out, the eyes painted with a greenish tone, but the overall body of this one is painted with a really cool green. Maybe not the most realistic green, but it does look really neat on the figure. This one looks very much so like a little baby Triceratops, so obviously this isn't meant to be an adult, and maybe that Spino was a baby too, I don't know. But we can take note to the beak sculpted out pretty decently. We can see the nostrils. Again, some skin texture that looks really nice, but my camera probably is like really not happy with this because it hates greens. We have some osteoderms and stuff as we move back into the body, kind of all leading up into the tail. We got the legs and everything sculpted, the claws and everything sculpted. Unpainted though. No real paintwork on this one outside of the eyes and the primary green color. That's really about it. But he's a cute little baby Triceratops. We've also got quite a bit of extras in here as well. We have a launcher here, a little missile launcher that Zora can hold, and I would imagine probably shoots quite nicely, much better than the recent Matchbox set that I had. When it comes to the missile launcher on that one, sculpt wise it looks pretty nice. Again, for what it is, you've got a little red up here, a purple for the primary tone of color of the launcher, and then a very bright yellow for the missile area itself. Then you've also got some more extras here that you can see, again, sculpted pretty nicely. You can see painted with a gray. Same deal for the sword, which maybe is the most random choice to take to an island full of dinosaurs, but it does look pretty cool. And again, same deal as far as the sculpt, and of course this one is painted with a black. And then we move on, we've got a Quetzalcoatlus in here as well, and he looks kind of like a little smug Quetzalcoatlus. Look at the smirk he has on his face. The beak is sculpted pretty nicely though. We can see some nice texturing to it. Again, the colors of this one aren't exactly what I would say are the colors of the Quetzalcoatlus in Rebirth, but it does look pretty fun, especially when it comes to the lighter tone here in the beak playing off of the darker purplish tone of the primary body. We can see, again, a glass eye for this one. We also have this kind of like feathers there leading off of the back of the head, and as you can see, they're very flexible. They're actually a nice rubber, which is pretty cool. So you can see even Imaginext has made some nice upgrades to their figures recently, which definitely makes them nicer. We have some swivel articulation in the neck. Can't go forward and back though. As you move down into the body, you actually do have a very brief period of a red-orange in the underside of the neck and throat. The fine detail moving down looks really good. You can even see like some pycnofibers hanging off of the chest. And again, mostly it looks like a skin texture, like a scaly sort of a look for the Quetzalcoatlus, with just a little area of what appears to be like pycnofibers on the underside of the chest. As you move down into the wings, you can see the arm area kind of sculpted nicely as far as the skin texture. Claws here that are unpainted, but kind of have a decent sculpt. And we have a blue here for the wings, and you can see the texturing of the wings again looks really quite nice. And then we lead back, we've also got the legs of the pterosaur as well as a little tail. And then again, looking from the underside, we've got the claws and everything. You do actually have articulation here in the wings, and then same deal for the legs, so you can kind of make it look like it's flying, and then of course make it look like it's standing. So that is pretty fun. Again, having the ability to sort of have it with that visual in both different ways. Very, very fun Quetzalcoatlus. And then the entire reason I was super drawn to this set, we have the Titanosaurus as well. And again, we've got that big kind of like bump here on the snout. Well, that's intriguing. That's actually a rubber. I didn't expect that. It's actually kind of a softer, almost squishy sort of rubber in that area. We can see the nostrils of the sauropod. Also have some very nice looking skin texture and scale detail. Again, kind of like yellowish eyes, the nice glass eye sort of a look. Then you've got a really dark bluish tone that picks up, moves through the lower jaw and then back into the neck. And instead of that kind of like really weird, almost sail-like look we have this sort of thing going on for this version of the Titanosaurus, which also, again, is a rubber, so it's very flexible, kind of nice as far as that goes. That also picks back up again here in the back of the dinosaur leading down. We can see the darker blue kind of striping into the lighter tone of the sauropod, and we can also take note to the skin texture of the underside. looking really good when it comes to the fine detail. It's very nicely done. We also have articulation in the neck, which can go up and down. That's really it. You can't go left and right or swivel or anything, just up and down. As we move into the body, we've got a few osteoderms poking up here and there. And again, more really nice looking skin texture leading along. When it comes to the actual fine texturing, you can see it looks very vibrant. Leading down, a few more osteoderms in the legs. Also a little sense of the musculature. You could take note to the elbow and the knee and everything in the legs. We've also got the nails sculpted pretty decently, and they have a gloss coat but no actual paintwork. We have articulation in the legs, so the legs can go forward and back, which work pretty decently. That's pretty fun. Obviously, the feet are huge on the figure, but these are always very exaggerated and silly as far as the designs go. And then you lead up into a nice curve for the tail, which does have more of that dark blue striping out there at the end of the tail. Again, pretty decent looking texturing along the underside, and you see pretty much the same thing when you look at it from the other side. So, pretty cool figure. Honestly, all of these are quite nice. I'm very clearly not going to measure each and every one of these figures. There's just no chance of that happening. But what I will do is, of course, give you guys some size comparisons. So there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Colovosaurus, Robert Muldoon, and the Collect Day Human Being next to our Imaginext set, and you can clearly see again, most of the figures are really quite small, especially when you see like Zora over there next to Muldoon. Very clearly she's a lot smaller. The only figure in this set that really has any amount of actual size to it is the Titanosaurus, but even looking at that, it's not a whole lot larger than an Attack Pack, Danger Pack, or I guess you could call it Frenzy Pack with the Rebirth figures. We've also got a Mattel and Captives minifigure stepping in here, showing you that some of these figures are absolutely in the minifigure size range, like the Spino and Triceratops. The Quetzalcoatlus and Mosasaurus are just a little bit bigger. I would say those are closer to like the Captives supersized figures. And to show you that, there we have the supersized Captives Mosasaurus next to the Imaginext version, almost making it look like the Imaginext version is trying to sniff its butt. But you can very clearly see that the size isn't all that far off, showing you that these larger figures are just a little bit bigger than like minis usually are, but roughly in the supersized Captives size range. And then one final comparison just with a Mattel Velociraptor and Dilophosaurus to kind of iron out one more size. The majority of these figures are figures that we've seen kind of before as far as like the size range and stuff goes, especially when it comes to like the Spino. I've definitely seen him before. So the Imaginext figure size range is usually fairly common in these type of figures, so I don't think we need too many comparisons. You probably already have a pretty good idea of the size, but if not, hopefully these will help. So this brand new Imaginext Jurassic World Rebirth Land, Sea, and Air set is pretty cool. It's definitely fun for what it is. You're obviously not going to find super high quality, impressive dinosaur figures here. You won't find figures that are quite as impressive as you find in the Mattel mainline and stuff like that, but what you will find are some pretty neat, very exaggerated versions of quite a few of the Rebirth dinosaurs, and of course the pterosaur and marine reptile with the Mosasaurus, but definitely really fun stuff. I don't know for sure if there's a Triceratops in Rebirth. I don't think we've seen one of those at all so far, so that one may or may not be in the movie, but we know there is a Quetzalcoatlus, a Spinosaurus, a Mosasaurus, and the Titanosaurus, and of course Zora Bennett. But all of the figures look pretty much as they usually do when it comes to the Imaginext line. They do sport some pretty decent detail, though, even better than I recall on a lot of the Imaginext figures, which is nice to see. Again, very exaggerated, kind of goofy looking designs, but sort of in a way reminiscent to the way they look in the film, but just with very childish designs overall. And again, Zora as well has that exact same thing going on, just like the actual dinosaurs and stuff do. But overall, it's a pretty fun set with some pretty neat and in some cases articulated dinosaurs and pterosaur and mosasaurs and all that stuff. So if you are interested in this, I will include a link in the description to where I purchased it on Amazon.com. So check that link, grab it if you want it. It does retail for about $20, so pretty decent deal to get so many figures. So check that link, pick it up if you want it, and like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.